Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. My name is Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. Hope everybody enjoyed the long weekend and paid some tribute to those who have fought so gallantly for America over the more than 100 years that we've celebrated Memorial Day. On to the schedule today. Before we go to Zach Levesque at Northpointe, a couple reminders. One, the governor's schedule is very different today. She'll be going live at 11 a.m. We'll be carrying that live. And then at 12 noon, we'll have Dr. Michael Fine. Let's go to Zach Levesque. Zach, how are we?
We're good. Just coming off a long weekend and some positivity, around and in the market for sure.
Yeah, so let's go to the stock market. Stock market is flying again this morning. Obviously, the tech stocks, even for the year, are up, which seems almost shocking as it can be. But now the market's really recovering. It's looking up substantially this morning. What's fueling that in your thought process? I know you're not a market guy professionally, but you're a smart business guy.
Well, I appreciate that, Josh. So I do pay attention to the stock market, and as we know, there's correlation between the stock market and long-term interest rates. Recently, the stock market went down to about 18,000. A lot of people thought it was an overly aggressive move down. It has been trending upwards, and a lot of the news today and a lot of the positivity and stock gains revolve around, like you said, the tech piece, because a lot of the companies that are tech savvy are getting through this coronavirus a lot better than non-tech savvy companies, and there are also a lot of companies making more money during this pandemic. And in addition, a lot of the companies like Gilead, these health companies, it almost seems like that .com era where everybody's kind of guessing who's going to have the strongest vaccine, and a lot of these companies are vying to produce that. So we're seeing a lot of movements in that sector as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, I think, latest count this morning, there's 136 vaccines now in play at one level of pre-testing or in testing. Let's go over to your world. There's a piece in the Wall Street Journal today, obviously talking about concerns about unemployment and what that's going to do to credit scores and whether or not that's going to impact refinancing or new mortgages. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting article, and I think once the pandemic hit, there was so much uncertainty. Interest rates came back down. There was a period of 1 or 2 weeks where interest rates were actually going up when they shouldn't have been because there was so much uncertainty in the market. I think the biggest thing that we have to pay attention to really, though, is the unemployment piece. And when the unemployment rates were forecasted to be at or above 15% about 45 days ago, some people were surprised. Some already had it priced in the market. But what that does to lenders is it puts them in a more uncertain time. And there's really no way to forecast, because if this pandemic continually got worse and it looked like we weren't going to be restarting the economy like it appears we are now in June, if that was pushed out to August, September, and unemployment rates went from 15 to 20, 25, I mean, there were some projections, some crazy unemployment projections. As early as a month ago, that unemployment would be a lot higher and a lot north of 15%. So this uncertainty makes everybody that's lending money pause. That's why the Fed had stepped in and increased liquidity so that they could make sure that the real estate market, whether it's purchase loans or refinance loans, was still functioning. And as we see numbers come out, it did surprise a lot of people that the transactions in March, April were higher than people thought they would be. The market is still functioning, and that's because there still is access to credit, which is very, very important, and the Fed knew that.
Yeah, absolutely. Both the White House economic advisor and the Secretary of Treasury have both said, listen, really unemployment's probably at about 25%.
Yeah.
I think everybody's hoping that as the economy, we go into phase 2, businesses start to reopen, that some of that hiring takes place. But that's really the critical element to what's going on in America and especially in the southern New England economy is getting people back to work, right?
Yeah, agreed. And I think that, one of the large questions that's still looming is if it is 25, how does 25 become 20? How does 20 become 15? And what's the pace of that? And I think a lot of people feel like even if it gets to 25, that's a short-term situation because it was a knee-jerk effect. And not only was it a knee-jerk effect, but most companies had to shut down. And with the PPE supporting them, they were able to do that and still get through these tough months. But the real question is, once the market does get back and we are reopened across the country, how quickly does that unemployment rate go down? It's really anybody's guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that seems to be developing that is going to be a factor over the next few months is these large corporation bankruptcies. We're seeing on the retail side 3 or 4, and they're going to shed a lot of jobs. J.C. Penney, J. Crew, Pier 1 going out of business, Neiman Marcus. And then over the weekend, we saw Hertz Rent-A-Car and the implications of the rental car industry being curtailed because of the travel industry. Rental car companies represent 10% of all new car sales. That has a huge implications to the auto industry and somewhat to us in Rhode Island. Listen, we're one of the biggest auto importers here in Rhode Island down at Quonset. Are those things that you think can have ripple effects that may impact the economic recovery for 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you bring up a company like Hertz. I think Hertz was one of those companies that was already getting affected by an Uber, by a Lyft, by all these car services. And, maybe the pandemic was like the final nail in the coffin for them. Hertz been around for a while, a staple of, American ingenuity, and Hertz has done so much, obviously, and it's a very sad story. But it looks like it was more of it was a company like that, filings like that, J.C. Penney, that didn't have those efficiencies, the online ordering. As you look at a company like Walmart, they bought Jet.com a couple of years ago, which is fueling their online presence. Target did the same thing to compete with Amazon. So especially right now, the companies that aren't inventive and aren't recreating almost their story are going to be left behind. Hertz is a really sad story. And I didn't know that 10% of car sales, and you're saying in the U.S. were Hertz related. So I think the question there is it going to be a 10% drop off? But what happens when these car services go out of business? Does that mean there's just going to be more Uber and Lyft drivers? Because as I understand, I think Uber and Lyft are actually purchasing a lot of vehicles themselves and then leasing it out to their drivers, right?
Yeah, that's the beginning. But they're also, Uber alone has laid off, I believe, 6,300 workers across the country. But anything travel related is, in for a long recovery, much quicker than maybe some of the other business sectors. I keep hearing, it's anecdotal, but it's from influencing realtors here in the marketplace, that this New York, Boston phenomena is a reality. In other words, that folks who live in New York, folks that live in Boston are really moving quickly to look at the Providence metro area, especially affluent areas like the East Side, Barrington, East Greenwich, and they're transferring their $1 million condo into a $1 million 5-bedroom house down in Rhode Island. That's got to be a positive impact at one level of sustaining and stabilizing the real estate market, but on the other level doesn't help affordability, which has always been a problem in Rhode Island.
Yeah, and I think affordability, especially in whenever you get closer to the water, things become more expensive, right? Especially property. The east side of Providence, that real estate, even 3 to 4 miles west of the east side of Providence, usually values drop pretty dramatically. And it's funny that you mentioned this. Last week, I actually got a call from a friend that I went to college with who owns a condo in New York. And he wanted to get pre-approved for a purchase in Greenwich. And, there's a lot of really nice areas outside of New York. And to your point, there's a lot of really nice areas outside of Boston. And, listen, if you take a step back and you can just get over the fact that you're not going to be in the city, and the pandemic can do that to people. They get scared if they still want to, if they have kids or if they're planning to have a family. Now they're concerned about health and well-being of their family. it passes the look and sniff test, because if you're paying $1.5 million for a condo that's on the 20th floor, and you can get real estate for around the same price that is 4 times the size, with a 3-car garage, in a nice municipality where you can send your kids to school, like in East Greenwich, like a Lincoln, go down south to Barrington. I think it makes sense. And I think this whole pandemic kind of forced people to really look inside and kind of figure out what is really important to them. And when you layer in the remote working piece, let's rewind 6 to 8 months, somebody working in the city, in New York, in Boston, going to work every day. Now they're working from home in the pandemic, and they're like, you know what? It's not really too bad. I can still get out when I want to get out. I can be as productive, if not more productive than before. So maybe I don't have to live in the city. For me, I like working in the city. As you know, my office is downtown in the Turk's Head building, but I like getting out of the city and driving home to my house. And, not that everybody is like that, but I really think that this forced people to look inside, and it's changing a lot more people than, I think most people realize. You realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, 3 of the major, smartest, most data-driven companies, Twitter, Google, and Facebook, have all told their workers you can work from home. And in some cases, in Facebook, that may be a permanent change. So those companies have figured out a couple of things. It's safer. It's in the company's best interest because people are more productive, and the workers seem to enjoy it and takes the stress out of their existence. So it's a major, major dynamic change in the workforce. Zach, listen, as always, you get the last word. What do people need to know about the mortgage industry and real estate?
Well, people need to know that, especially in Rhode Island, the purchase market is very hot. I talk to my realtors on a daily basis. If properties are on the market now and they're priced right, open houses are crazy right now. Obviously, you have to let a couple people in at the same time, but there's, it's like the line at Whole Foods at the line at Stop and Shop to get in. There's people waiting to get in. Inventory is low, and if you are buying a house, you're going to probably be in a multiple offer situation. So if you are talking to your realtor and you want to get into something quickly, this is a very fluid market, and people that take a step back and think that the real estate market is not functioning, it's as hot as I've seen it, in a long time, and that has to do with rates, inventory. So so buckle up, put a good offer in, and see what happens, right?
Absolutely. Zach, thank you so much. Zach from Northpointe, as always, every Tuesday joins us. Stay tuned for the rest of the afternoon. Governor Raimondo at 11 o'clock, an unusual time. We have not seen data from the state for the last 2 days. Last week was the second deadliest week during the coronavirus, so concerns there. And at 12 noon, we'll have Dr. Michael Fine. We'll be talking about a number of issues, an interesting series of tweets by Dr. Megan Ranney over at Rhode Island Hospital and Brown University's Warren Alpert that sort of sent Facebook a buzz when we posted it over the weekend, talking about how little we know about this virus. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you back at 11 o'clock, Governor Raimondo Live.